couldn't ask for a better fight, champ.
One man will get to go through the rest of his life saying,
and new WBC Super Featherweight Champion of the World, the Ciudad de Mexico.
Just 4 months after his third fight with Marco Antonio Barrera, Erik Morales entered a highly anticipated duel that sparked the public interest. El Terrible's rival was the sensational Filipino Manny Pacquiao. In 2003, Pacquiao defeated Barrera in the rank of an outsider at 3-1. In 2004, he knocked down Juan Manuel Marquez 3 times in the first round. But he was deprived of the victory in that fight due to a mistake by the referee in counting the round, which resulted in a draw. Boxing triangles are usually of little significance, but it was hard to ignore the fact that just 4 months prior to the Morales versus Pacquiao fight, Morales lost to Barrera, whom Pacquiao had beaten a year earlier. Nevertheless, Morales has already mastered the first lightweight division and even became the world champion with 2 titles. But for Pacquiao, it was a debut in this division. Therefore, although the Filipino was the favorite at 1.5-1, the Mexican fighter had more experience in the ring. Pacquiao was a rising star, but Morales had been a star and one of the strongest boxers in the world for many years, being promoted by Bob Arum. Consequently, Erik was favored and his fee was higher, at a guaranteed $2.5 million, and Pacquiao at $1.75 million. In the negotiations leading up to this fight, a controversy took place regarding which gloves would be used in the fight. Pacquiao and his trainer Freddie Roach were surprised to learn that they were contractually unable to use Reyes gloves that Pacquiao was used to fighting with. Somehow, there was a clause in the contract that the Filipino must wear gloves from the company Morales used, the winning company. We will return to the question of why this happened and what it ultimately led to a little later. But the end result was that instead of the Reyes puncher gloves, the Filipino had to use the softer winning gloves. The vast majority of Mexican boxers wore Reyes gloves. But as for Morales, he switched to the Japanese winning gloves after a series of wrist injuries, as his hands could not handle the harder Reyes gloves. The irony was that the Asians wanted to use the Mexican gloves, and the Mexicans forced him to use Asian gloves. Before the fight, Morales said that he carefully reviewed Pacquiao's first fight against Marquez 8 times and understood how to face the Filipino. And already in the first round, Pacquiao provided an opportunity for his opponent to back up his words. Pac-Man launched a decisive attack. Morales withstood the onslaught and responded in kind to the aggression.
like so many great fighters, if you come close to hurting Erik Morales, he's coming right at you. He wants to. Another hard left hand, partially blocked, but doing damage anyway.
Pacquiao changed tactics and began to carry out attacks to the body. Again, Morales responded. The first round went to Pacquiao, but it was noticeable that Morales' fighting style was somewhat uncomfortable for Pacquiao. Erik had an extremely rare trait. When he attacked aggressively, he was calculated and understood what he was doing. As a result, El Terrible's volatile attacks were not only spectacular, but also highly effective. In the next 2 rounds, Morales began to actively work with the jab, and this became a big problem for Pac-Man. Erik acted very rapidly with his front hand.
Good hard right hand by Morales. Pacquiao cuts off with the left. Marquez was dominant.
And that's what it looks like he's doing, but right there.
Now Pacquiao lands and drives Morales into the corner.
But Pacquiao was saved by his speed, which Morales also found difficult to cope with at times. But in terms of professional boxing, Morales taught his opponent a few lessons, including that Morales' counterattacks were not emotional responses, but accurate calculations. Morales was able to make Pacquiao back up, something that he was not used to in the ring, and during these times, he was very vulnerable.
Rounds 2 and 3, Jim. I gotta tell you something. If Eric Morales,
But you know, you can't change Morales. He's had a lot of success with the style that he fights in.
The fourth round turned out to be discouraging for Pacquiao, unsuccessful in both attacks and in defense. Morales controlled the fight and would even occasionally mock his opponent.
Manny Pacquiao isn't going to deck Eric Morales.
I think in part what's going on here is
You ain't never boxed before. You got no boxing to know this to see what's happening here. You ever boxed before, you know to land a shot that can put the other guy out, like Larry's saying. But Morales is in the best position right now because this is the fight he wants. This is how Marquez came back and did so well.
Hard left hand by Morales is taking these punches well. Better than most previous Pacquiao opponents.
Good left hook by Morales.
Inside. Pacquiao never saw it coming. There's another left hook he didn't see. There's a right uppercut that landed too. Pacquiao's doing some damage. Morales is landing the higher quality. Pacquiao.
In the fifth round, Pacquiao's performance took a turn for the worse. In a head collision, he received a serious cut to his right eyebrow, which was the result of moving dangerously close to Morales with his head. But there was a snag in the situation. Referee Joe Cortez mistakenly assumed that the cut occurred after a glove hit, and that is what was put on the score sheet. This meant that if the doctor suddenly felt that Pacquiao would not be able to continue, then he would be defeated by a technical knockout. This only added stress to the actions of Pacquiao, who at times began to openly rush his opponent in an attempt to end the fight. But this was all that Morales needed.
Feels as though he's going to need a knockout. He's trying to get in the lower weight classes. Needs a knockout. Looks loaded by Pacquiao.
Maybe a little tired. Maybe a little weak.
Among other things, Eric adjusted the tempo of the fight, using his combinations. He either slowed or increased the pace of the fight with his goal to control his opponent using his front hand. One of the most important things was that Morales did not fear Pacquiao's punching power, as much as Barrera or Marquez had feared it. Pacquiao shook and dropped these rivals more than once, but the Pac-Man's blows did not have the same effect on Morales. Was it the unusual gloves? Maybe. But there was also the fact that Morales knew his opponent and was confident in the ring. And when El Terrible feels like the master of the ring, it is extremely difficult to knock him off course. Overall, Pacquiao lost the first half of the fight, but at the beginning of the second half, he pulled himself together and gave an excellent seventh round. Morales did not want to give up the initiative, so the 3-minute round turned into a spectacular battle that was difficult to calculate.
Beltran, after listening, oh my goodness, stop the story and cover the action as they using his greater skills and craft to school somebody who was a sensation.
The 8th round won to Morales, but the 9th was probably Pacquiao's best round in the fight. It seemed that in this round a small turning point was reached. Morales slowed down and no longer responded to every attack from Pacquiao, as he had at the beginning of the fight. But it could not be said that the Mexican was losing control of the fight. The 10th and 11th rounds turned out to be very competitive, with dangerous attacks from both sides.
At the end of the round, and Morales wobbles after a big fight with a man born in a boxing gym, has had an extremely active, and it's going to get hot again down the stretch. What a right hand by Morales. Pacquiao's in trouble. Morales wobbled him with that right. Let's see if Eric can finish his man. Pacquiao with
Careful, he's trying to get him, but he better be very careful. Pacquiao is fighting back like a madman.
I think it's Pacquiao's mouthpiece.
It is Pacquiao's mouthpiece, without a doubt.
Look at Pacquiao strafing Morales with left hands, even while fighting without the mouthpiece. And now Morales Morales is using that jab over and over, sensing that Pacquiao may have trouble seeing with the right eye. Good straight right hand by Morales, and a left hand inside by Manny. You know what that means.
Before the start of the final round, Jose Morales, Eric's father and coach, told his son, "Don't do anything stupid and be careful." But Eric interpreted this advice in his own way. He got into an unusual left-handed stance and went head-to-head with Pacquiao. The Mexican lost the final round and missed a few tough punches, but he resisted and eventually won the fight by unanimous decision. It was a double victory for him. He beat a fighter who was considered the favorite and beat the man who had defeated his worst enemy, Barrera.
This is a picture that doesn't need any captions.
See, he's just stubborn. He just means he's not going to be out there in the southpaw position. I don't know why he would do this. That was crazy of him to even do that.
What a fight!
Now back to the story of the gloves. How did it happen that Pacquiao was unable to use the Reyes gloves that he had been wearing for years? Before the fight, the contract had already been signed, so Pacquiao could not change the conditions. Boxers are not usually engaged in the finalization of their contracts and do not delve into every detail. It is their manager's job to consult with the boxer on key points. Pacquiao did not have a manager at the time and relied on his promoter, Murad Muhammad. Even before the fight with Morales, there were rumors that Muhammad was not entirely honest with his boxer, taking much more from him than he was due. This was especially apparent around the time of the fight, when Muhammad was living in luxury, while Pacquiao rented economy accommodations. As it turned out, in negotiations with Bob Arum, who was the promoter of Morales, Muhammad sold out his boxer, agreeing to have Pacquiao box in other gloves in exchange for an additional financial reward. And it would have been okay if this money went to Pacquiao, but it went to Muhammad. Naturally, he did not say anything to the boxer and the coach and told them about the gloves only after everything had been agreed upon. After that, Freddie Roach, who clearly saw the relationship of Muhammad to Pacquiao, ran out of patience and he contacted the famous manager Shelley Finkel, who worked with such boxers as Mike Tyson, Pernell Whitaker, and Vladimir Klitschko. Finkel got down to business and found out that Muhammad pocketed most of Pacquiao's royalties. For example, out of the $700,000 that the Pac-Man earned for the first fight against Barrera, Muhammad took $200,000 for himself as interest, which is quite adequate, but at the same time he deducted another $350,000, calling it promotional expenses, and this money went to Muhammad's own company. As a result of the $500,000 that Pacquiao actually earned for this fight, the boxer received only $150,000. In the situation with Morales, Muhammad went even further. The contract stipulated that Pacquiao's guaranteed royalty was $1.75 million, but the additional income from pay-per-view was not paid to the boxer, as is always the case, but went to the promoter, Muhammad. The fight was successful, and Pacquiao was to receive another $3 million in addition to his guaranteed fee. But those royalties went to Muhammad's pocket. For 4 years of work with Pacquiao, Muhammad appropriated about $7 million, which was owed to the boxer. When Finkel and Roach, after the first fight with Morales, explained the situation in detail to Pacquiao, he went to court. Muhammad realized that if he went to trial, then first, he would have to pay a huge fine, and secondly, if it turned out that he had violated the Muhammad Ali Act, he would be investigated by the FBI. Muhammad offered the Filipino $1 million. Pacquiao refused, demanding $8 million. Finally, they settled for an undisclosed amount, but Pacquiao's team said they were satisfied. Murad Muhammad also took part in another incident before the first fight with Morales. As a rule, boxers must donate blood for analysis and be examined by an ophthalmologist within 30 days before the fight. Pacquiao was tested within the prescribed period, but a few days before the fight, it suddenly turned out that the results of the examination had been lost. Literally the day before the weigh-in, the Nevada Athletic Commission ordered Pacquiao to be tested again. At that time, the boxer who was preparing for the weigh-in had not ate or drank for several days. After giving blood, he felt ill, and the doctor advised him to drink water. But the Filipino could not do this because he needed to meet the weight category limit. Murad Muhammad was responsible for transferring Pacquiao's original test results from the California clinic to the Nevada Commission. And so, the question arises, why did Muhammad delay in reporting the missing documents until right before the fight? This led to the speculation Muhammad contributed not just to the loss of the reports, but to the controversial delay. Morales was promoted by Bob Arum, and there were rumors that Muhammad and Arum had reached an agreement and decided to influence the outcome of the fight. The story about the gloves is an indirect confirmation of this. Arum was not yet working with Pacquiao, and Morales was one of his main stars. Therefore, it is natural that he was interested in the victory of his boxer. But Muhammad needed extra money, because apart from Pacquiao, his only other boxer was Evander Holyfield, who was already at the end of his career. Therefore, it was a great temptation to earn extra money on all fronts, to receive financial bonuses from the opposing team for influencing the outcome, and to earn interest from Pacquiao's fee. The odds of the fight were already very attractive. By betting on Morales to win, his money could be doubled. Whether this speculation is really true is difficult to say. However, knowing the deals that are often made behind the scenes of professional boxing, this story does not seem unbelievable. 6 months later, in September 2005, the boxers entered the same ring again, but against different rivals. In the co-main fight of the evening, Pacquiao defeated Hector Velasquez ahead of schedule, but the main fight participant, Erik Morales, decided to test himself in a new weight category. Even though he had performed in the 59-kilogram category for 2 years, maintaining that weight was not easy for him. Therefore, he moved up to the 61.2-kilogram category, picking the very challenging Zahir Rahim as his opponent. As a result, his lightweight debut ended in a defeat for Morales on points. Many then started talking about the fact that Erik did not have enough motivation. After his fight with Barrera, and then with Pacquiao, it was difficult for him to find the strength to battle such a serious opponent. As a result, his fee was much lower, and he looked like a shadow of his former self. But Erik's motivation quickly returned. A rematch with Pacquiao was scheduled for January 21, 2006. Morales was again the favorite. His fee was $3 million. Pacquiao's fee was $2 million. As for the gloves, here the Mexican side was still favored, but in a slightly different way. In exchange for the fact that Pacquiao will box with his usual Reyes gloves, the Filipino had to give up on the additional income from pay-per-view. Instead of 50-50, the proportion was 60-40 in favor of Morales. But Pacquiao said he was quite satisfied with this arrangement, especially considering that this time he was no longer cheated by an unscrupulous promoter. As for who was anticipated to win, some favored Morales, others Pacquiao. It seemed that no one took into consideration the differences between Morales' original victory over Pacquiao and his fated performance against Zahir Rahim. Some believe that Morales' style was uncomfortable for Pacquiao, and that the second fight would follow the same pattern as the first. Others said that Pacquiao was progressing with each fight and would look better. In general, the interest before the second fight was colossal. The first round of the second fight was very similar to the first round of the previous fight. Pacquiao leads the fight, Morales waits, and then goes on an aggressive offense. But still, there were differences. Pacquiao looks more composed than the first fight and more dynamic. He is fighting with his familiar gloves, and there were no incidences with lost test results and delays at the last moment. But despite these changes, Pacquiao entered the ring a different fighter. Immediately after the first fight against Morales, Freddie Roach turned Pacquiao into a boxer who could hit hard with both hands, as opposed to just favoring one side. Roach began to expand his boxer's arsenal, and already at the beginning of this fight, it was clearly visible that Pacquiao was doing a lot of work with his right hand. His jab and right hook, which were ineffective in the first fight, began to bother Morales in this fight from the very beginning. In the second round, Pacquiao shocks Morales for the first time. Eric manages to grab the rope with his hand and prevent a fall. For the first time in their confrontations, slight confusion appears on Morales' face. But Eric is not so easily discouraged, and he confidently took the third round. And the fourth and fifth rounds followed in a similar pattern, with Morales having the advantage. Still, it did not feel as if he was in complete control, as he was in the first fight. Pacquiao quite often carried out deliberate attacks, and not the chaotic ones as in their previous fight.
Right hand from Morales, right? All right, let's take a look at it. You're going to see a big shot from Manny Pacquiao. He got hit first of all by Morales. Drove him back into the ropes. Morales, after a pretty good first round, but then, well, here you see Morales again backing up Pacquiao. But the big punch of the round was scored by Pacquiao. There it is. The beautiful left cross that sent Morales staggered. Of course, he works that to his advantage, too, by giving you some different angles. Now Morales is coming back.
Answering with great counter punches.
Right on the chin. Another jab.
Morales shooting that jab like a laser, really being accurate with it tonight.
Final seconds. Round 3.
Both fighters trying to close out the round big.
Let's go to the gym and spar around.
Oh, good left hand from
Morales
Morales.
up there, and there is showing some movement from the
Good
left
right hand.
And that's when Morales at least...
Off with that right hand, you're in big trouble. Going to the body, Pacquiao. Look at Pacquiao coming back with a flurry, but not that effective. Little footwork problem there.
Despite Morales' advantage and winning the fourth and fifth rounds, there was one problem that was slowly beginning to form. Several times, the Filipino had grazed his opponent with a hard left straight. Morales was unable to adapt to these lightning-fast shots, and in the sixth round, with one of these blows, Pacquiao caught Morales by surprise. Subsequently, this style of left became one of the most dangerous and inconvenient attacks from Pacquiao. Manny sensed Morales' confusion and began building on his success. And again, unlike the first fight, his attacks were meaningful and effective, not spontaneously chaotic with a low degree of efficiency.
Pac-Man has it.
Talk about the round now. We've been seeing these back and forth rounds.
But you know what makes these rounds so difficult to score is Manny will connect with a hard shot, but then Morales, hurt or not, answers with a combination to figure out who's hurt and who's not.
Morales looks very insulted.
Yes, he's a proud man. What an exchange.
Manny backing up Morales.
Pacquiao's having a brilliant round.
Morales just countered.
Oh, and a huge left hand.
Look at Manny's speed.
In the sixth round, Pacquiao gave Morales a complete rout. Eric almost ended this round on the floor, and only Kenny Bailey standing next to him involuntarily kept him from falling. During the break in the corner, Morales was told to jab more and move. But Eric again decided to do it his own way, and at first it seemed that he was right. El Terrible went on the attack and pinned Pacquiao to the ropes. But this did not deter Pacquiao for long, and in the middle of the round, Morales realized he could not maintain the pace that he had set a minute earlier.
So much pride, so much at stake for these fighters, countries behind them.
Morales doing it again.
These guys are invading into Castillo Corral.
Well, we already have a candidate for Fight of the Year.
Morales has been in many of these.
Pacquiao being dedicated to the body.
This is just breathtaking.
Left hand from nothing to him. This is just fun. The big difference.
The jab, the body work, the hooks to the body.
Right hand from Morales. There we go. Manny's speed counters.
The 8th round. Pacquiao hits Morales at speed from a distance. Eric tries to respond, but these counterattacks are no longer as dangerous and effective. Pacquiao looks much fresher. Up till now, Morales answered Pacquiao's blows with a counterattack. Now, in view of his fatigue and the damage he took, he did not have this luxury.
Countering again. Here we go. I don't know if people believe what there's artistry.
Morales with a punch there again, but it's one punch. Seeing Pacquiao answers back 3, 4, 5 shots at a time.
Huge, huge punch by Pacquiao. Now Morales answers. Final 10 seconds. You'll never get a better show, folks. It's not possible.
This is as good as it gets.
Took advantage of it.
You have that lead left. Take your pick.
Nice left hooks, right hooks with Manny. And he's taking Freddie Rex's advice and answering with a lot of hooks. Coming up with a lot of big.
Well, he had to improve.
He did.
At the end of the 9th round, the unimaginable happened. Morales openly retreated, waiting for a break.
Could fatigue be setting in?
And he got tagged by Morales, but at the end of the round, it was all Pacquiao all of a sudden.
Round 10. The Filipino starts the attack with a hit to the body. Manny sees that Eric is very exhausted. Instead of rushing to finish off his opponent, he began to systematically destroy him.
And he surprises me.
Having missed several incoming heavy punches to the body, Morales decided to launch a retaliatory attack, but ran into a blow that he had not yet encountered from Pacquiao, a check hook. Eric barely stays on his feet, but the next blow finished him off. For the first time in his career, Eric Morales was actually knocked down. He experienced an official knockdown in the first fight with Barrera, but that was counted by mistake. Morales got up, but it took Pacquiao only 7 seconds to knock him back to the floor. Kenny Bailey decided that the Mexican had had enough and stopped the fight. Morales didn't protest. Unnoticed to almost everyone, Floyd Mayweather Jr. was present at ringside and was happy with the outcome of the fight. He had bet on Pacquiao to win, and was right. Floyd made several $100,000 that evening. But no one could have imagined that 9 years later, he would earn several $100 million fighting Pacquiao himself, because at the time Mayweather was fighting 3 divisions higher. But in the meantime, Pacquiao took revenge for his earlier defeat. Morales said he did not have enough strength for the whole fight due to weight changes between divisions, but still admitted that in this fight his performance was poor. After being defeated by Zahir Rahim, Morales had turned down the services of his father, who had trained him throughout his career. Eric believed that Jose Morales treated him as a father first, and not as a coach to his ward, and therefore did not sufficiently motivate him to fight. As a result, the first time he entered the ring without his father, Morales lost early for the first time. After this fight, Eric returned his father to the team. Considering that the score for the Pacquiao-Morales confrontation was 1-1, and both fights turned out to be both spectacular and profitable, everyone assumed that there would be a third decisive battle. But the path to the final match for the boxers turned out to be very different. Pacquiao entered the ring in July 2006 in his home country, beating Mexican Oscar Larios without any problems. But Morales was very upset by the first early loss in his career. He decided not to fight between matches and instead chose to rest and work on himself from a psychological point of view. The problem was that psychologically, Morales might be working on himself, but from a physical point of view, he was undisciplined and gained a lot of excess weight. At some point, Eric even thought to abandon the fight, since Pacquiao was at his optimum weight. Morales wanted to fight at 61.2 kilograms, but the Filipino side insisted that the fight be held at the same weight as the previous two matches, at 59 kilograms. Moreover, the contract stated that if the limit was exceeded, the Mexican would have to pay a fine of $500,000 for each pound. But the desire to recoup the defeat, as well as a guaranteed fee of $2.75 million, plus royalties which could increase the income to $5 million, prevailed. Pacquiao's guaranteed royalty was $3 million. For the first time in the entire trilogy, Pacquiao's guaranteed fee was more than Morales. The final chapter was scheduled for November 18, 2006. Pacquiao was the 2-to-1 favorite. After weighing in, Manny became the 3-to-1 favorite, as Morales looked very gaunt on the scales. But his interest in the fight was no less than in the previous ones. Morales, although considered a veteran of the ring, was only 2 years older than Pacquiao. 2 months before the fight, Eric turned 30. Pacquiao was only 1 month from his 28th birthday. Many believe that the Mexican was not yet at the end of his career, and that he should not be discounted despite his performance in the second fight. Additionally, Morales brought his father back to the team. But again, there was the story with the gloves. Although there were no disagreements, Pacquiao wore his familiar Mexican Reyes gloves. Another thing which was surprising, Morales ditched his Japanese winning gloves and chose Reyes gloves as well. Those who knew Eric Morales well concluded that he went all in for this fight. He would either win or lose by knockout. If you count the standards of this trilogy, then the first round was relatively calm. Pacquiao was fast and accurate, but Morales seemed to be waiting. But in the second round, Eric revealed his cards, offering his opponent a head-to-head fight. Naturally, Pacquiao gladly accepted the offer. At one point, Morales was so carried away by his attack that he found himself in a left-handed stance and open to a blow from the left, for which he was immediately punished with a knockdown. Morales accepted the knockdown as the cost of his tactics, and at the end of the round was ready to go again. This turned out to be one of the most spectacular confrontations in this fight. And it all started with a left straight from Pacquiao. The Filipino had a good shot with his left straight before that, but Freddie Roach not only improved this blow, but he also taught his boxer to calculate the opponent in order to deliver this blow more accurately, which caused it to become even more dangerous.
Hit him with both the right and the left, got him to go down. CompuBox numbers and 2, and you see the flurry with which they ended the round.
The third round. Morales was waiting for the right moment to start his own attack. But he was not facing the same Pacquiao as in the first fight. Manny became more varied and cunning, and no longer fell into most of Morales' traps.
Eric Morales not afraid to fight with one.
The next batch of problems for Morales began with a right hook, which was also seriously improved by Freddie Roach. This blow seriously shook Eric. Pac-Man then smelled blood and rushed to finish him off, which led to a knockdown. Morales got up, and for him it became all or nothing. Again, the boxers went head-to-head, and the crowd roared in delight at these two warriors battling it out. But that evening, the Filipino warrior was faster, stronger, and more diverse.
He straights Pacquiao with right hand, even while on unsteady
a third knockdown. Sitting on the canvas, Morales looked towards his corner, where his team is shouting for him to get up. But with a characteristic gesture of his head, El Terrible makes it clear that he is not going to continue. Manny Pacquiao wins the showdown, and with this, the Pacquiao-Morales trilogy came to an end. Their trilogy has become the highest grossing in the lightweight division. Their 3 fights sold more than 1 million pay-per-view tickets in total, with the total revenue from the fights exceeding $60 million. Morales did not look for excuses and stated the following. During preparation, I did everything, both physically and mentally, in order to win the fight. But I couldn't win. He was better today. I was shocked by his blows. It may be time to leave. And Morales did leave, but not immediately. 9 months after his third fight with Pacquiao, he went to fight for the world lightweight title against David Diaz. The problem was that the fight took place on the opponent's territory, and even though Eric knocked down Diaz in the first round and was better than his opponent throughout the fight, the judges ruled against Morales. After the fight, at 31, he announced his retirement. But after 3 years, he returned to the ring, and in September 2011, he won the world lightweight welterweight title, becoming the first Mexican in history to become the world champion in 4 different weight categories. He fought his last fight in 2012, and in 2018 he was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. At the time of the presentation of the award, his former main rival, Marco Antonio Barrera, stood next to him. Pacquiao finally solidified his status as a superstar in world boxing, and the vast majority of his super fights were still ahead. Morales entered politics, and at the beginning of 2021 became a congressman. He also works as a boxing commentator along with Barrera and Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. But Pacquiao is not only a top fighter, but also a reigning world welterweight champion. Manny Pacquiao is the first, and so far the only boxer in history to have been the reigning world champion in 4 different decades. He won his first title in the 90s, became a world champion in the 2000s and 2010s, and was still a world champion as the 2020s began. This, along with his many other achievements, makes him one of the greatest boxers in history. Despite their fierce confrontation in the ring, Pacquiao and Morales remained on good terms. In 2019, when Pacquiao learned that Mexican television had sent Morales to interview him, Manny invited him to his home, where they both recalled the fondness of their great confrontation in the ring. Please do not forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any new episodes about the boxing legends of the past. See you next time.